What's good? Hi.
That's Raymundo.
I'm Raymond. I'm local here in Salt Lake Valley. I'm an artist, a creative, a marketing professional, a networker, a number of things, but a conscious human at most.
I'm Alex. I do things. I do things from time to time. I'm not like quite to the point of calling myself an artist, but I definitely do that more than anything. So,
Raymundo, what does it mean to be yourself?
Well, being myself means being an authentic version of myself that isn't influenced by my ego. Seeing my ego is something that I've only recently learned to do pretty regularly, but being able to see my flaws in a light that tells me I'm the one choosing to act that way, but I'm choosing to act that way based on stimuli that has been put into me or that I've experienced through life, allows me to kind of say, like, okay, that is me, but it's not a decision I would have made consciously. So in that moment where I made the wrong decision, I was unconscious. My identity changes from identifying with my ego or identifying as the self. And recognizing it when it's in the ego and bringing it back to the self is important. But staying authentic to that true part of the self, I believe is difficult to change because you are born with it, but certain influences, certain experiences and things do develop you. So it's a question of nature versus nurture, as well as what you're born with inside of you in your soul.
what I'm hearing you say is that there's this relationship between choice and yourself. Being you, some people would think is an unconscious. Like you be you, and there's no responsibility to be like a better version of yourself and things like that. And what I'm really liking about what you're saying is that you're bringing choice into it and responsibility for the subtle things that make it's not just like whether or not you go to the coffee shop or something like that. It's whether or not you respect people at the coffee shop and consciously suppress your ego in such a way that it doesn't become a problem.
Right.
I really like that.
So not only that, it goes back to something we were talking before we recorded, that most choices are made out of either a feeling of positivity or negativity, a feeling of love or fear. And the more we act and choose our actions based on love, the more we are not only loving ourselves, but loving our collective people.
And that's a good thing.
Yes, absolutely, it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Some people would go for a world where everyone is distrustful of each other, and that the collective conscious is kind of weighed down with all this like unnecessary garbage. So
Right.
It's something to aspire to live in that love.
And the people that would imagine that world, that would imagine living in that world, to me, are living out of fear. Because there's things that they're afraid of that they've almost rationalized through their ego's opinion to say, like, no, it's okay for me to be afraid of these things. I just won't acknowledge them. And that's not how we overcome our fears. That's not how we grow. Love actually shines light onto fear and exposes why fear is almost pointless. So being yourself is almost like it's a process of loving yourself, because how can you be something that you don't love? How can you embody something that you don't love? Embodying fear almost comes out as negativity. It almost always shows as negativity.
Like you were saying, you can see others as yourself, and you can fall into this trap where the behavior of others is almost misperceived as the behavior of yourself, which can be a good thing and can be a bad thing. If you're in a positive environment, and I mean, I think that's what a lot of rehabilitation is meant to do, is bring positive environments to people and let them see what that means to be a positive person, to have that around in such a way that you can empathize with it. To be you is such a conscious effort because it's incredibly easy to get caught in the hype of things and to let other people decide for you what to say, what to do, what to think, how to feel, things like that. So to be you is one of those things that takes constant effort in order to differentiate yourself from the environment, at least enough to bring love to it.
I would agree with that, and I'll take a note back to something you said earlier about the brain being similar to a computer. I don't believe that we actually can control what type of input is given to us in any environment or situation. We don't have any control over the input given to us. We, being the computers, have control over the process and the output. So in that case, stimuli, data, input, anything that happens in life and experience is uncontrollable. We can't control that from our individual perspectives. However, our individual perspectives can control how we interpret the experience. Sometimes the environments that we're born into are limiting or are restrictive. Places like North Korea limit their internet access and what content is available to be seen. The Mormon Church limits people to extensive exposure to the outside world until they go on their missions. This is literally meant to steadily dose the amount of exposure to the real world and to the similarities that all humans actually carry. And that when we see homeless people on the street here, we don't really realize that there's homeless people on every street in the world. It's very different to really relate those things to people because they've never seen them, and they get caught in those perspectives that are lost in restrictive and limiting areas and environments. So when we get caught in those perspectives, we're caught in our ego. We're caught in the part of ourselves that is lost in fear and thinks that annihilation is the only way to salvation, when it's really not. Annihilation is another form of transformation. You have to be conscious and aware.
Strict counterpoint on the healthy thing. I just walked up into we're outside clearly, and I just walked up into this hill, and there were some dandelions in there, and they're so good for you, B vitamins and stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel so healthy, and I was like living naturally, and I didn't even have to get a McDonald's advertisement.
Of course, and the same thing goes for just the sun being out. Seasonal depression is an absolute thing. When you can't see the sun for weeks at a time because there's too much cloudage, you don't get any vitamin D from its natural sources.
Yeah.
You know, those raw natural sources of oxygen and sunlight and real like spring water, rainwater is essential to human health.
It's almost like you were saying, we're computers in that we can't know we can't control the stimulus that we're subjected to in a lot of ways. But we also can't control the weather. We can't control what our bodies are subjected to. And there's always that condition that your mind is embedded in the most glorious of wetware, the body, the human body, as a pinnacle of evolution, as the apex predator among apex predators. Like, we actually hunt each other. Like, we're so apex.
And more so, even just cosmically, you were talking about this, just the sheer placement of the Earth is significant. The fact that there's been life enough to develop. You know, not only that life has developed, but there's life enough to thrive and continue developing.
Yeah.
So cosmically significant, all we've really ever had to do is just be ourselves. Just to be.
I'm digging this.